Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're keeping things casual and making M&M shorts, which stands for modern and minimalist. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new. Modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 200 grams of yarn. That's 400 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you are team toilet paper over or under. I am an over girly. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we'll explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting these shorts started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain the height that we like for the waistband to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert. When we have these 2 loops on our hook, we're all going to yarn over and gently pull through both loops on our hook. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Again, into that following chain, we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. And that's it. From here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We are back and we have just completed our row 1. Now our row 2 and all of our other rows for the rest of the waistband are going to be back loop slip stitches. So start with a chain 1, flip our work. Now we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, then yarn over and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, all we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. Then for the rest of the waistband, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases until we get a width that can stretch, because remember this does have a decent amount of stretch to it, around the widest part of our hips, making sure that our rows are in multiples of 5 that is divisible by 4. Now once we have that completed, I will meet everyone back. So we are back. I've just completed the width of my waistband. Now I have a total of 140 rows that does end in multiples of 5 and is divisible by 4, and that width is just about 23 inches or 59 centimeters unstretched. Now before we go ahead and seam everything up, we're going to take the amount of rows that we have for the waistband and simply divide that into 4 and separate each of our sections evenly. So what I did was took my 140 rows, divided that by 4. That sum is 35, so I simply inserted my stitch marker into the first and into the 35th stitch, then into that next 35th stitch, and continue to repeat that, making my way all the way down. Now from stitch marker to stitch marker, for my numbers, I have 35 rows. Now we want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into the edges that's opposite from our hook. My hook is along this top end, so I insert my stitch markers into the bottom, so that once we do our following single crochet row, we can simply insert our stitch markers into the single crochets. So now that our stitch markers are into place, we're now going to fold our work in half so that we can seam it up. Now that we have folded our work in half, making sure that nothing is twisted, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, yarn over and pull through everything to connect. Then we're going to chain one and do our outside loop slip stitch seam to make it look like another back loop slip stitch row. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. Then into that next stitch into the back panel, inserting only into that back loop. We should have 3 loops on our hook. Then from here, simply yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop. Yarn over, pull through everything, and just continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. We are back and we have just completed our seam. Now all we're going to do is single crochet along the entirety of our waistband. So right after we worked our last outside loop slip stitch seam, we're all going to chain one. Then simply put 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. And we do want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into the same stitches. So into my first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook in through there. And insert with 1 single crochet. Since my tail end's right here, I'm just going to weave that in as I go. And single crochet per usual. Now I am going to insert my stitch marker into the top of that stitch, just so I can still keep my shorts indivisible of 4. Then let's do the next one. This is my following side row. Insert in through there with a single. Again, this raised row is my next side row, so find that top loop, insert with a single, and that's it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row. Now at the end of the row, we should end up with the same amount of stitches as rows that we made for the waistband, making sure that we are still inserting our stitch markers into the same stitches. And lastly, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try your piece on. If it's a little too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet everyone back right after we slip stitch into that chain space and do a chain up a 1 and cut. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete. We have slip stitched into that chain space. Now from here, we're going to do a chain up a 1 and cut, then insert our hook into one of our stitch marker stitches. So I went ahead and inserted my hook into that following stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the shorts to be, keeping in mind that the waistband will be high-waisted, so we're going to want to try this on, making sure that the waistband is sitting where it would sit when the piece is completed. Then make the chain that we need. I need roughly 9 inches or 23 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 45. Now that we have our chain completed, we're going to do a half double crochet row back. So now that we have our chain, block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then yarn over, preparing for a half double. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, insert with a half double crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. So we are back. We have made our way all the way down with our half double crochet row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is, for this first row, it's going to be a little bit different than the rest of the rows. So we're going to just find that next available stitch into the base, making sure that our work is still flipped right side out, and making sure that we're working towards the left, because the ribbing that we're going to have for the body isn't reversible. So since we're actually worked into the stitch mark, I'm just going to take this out because we don't need this anymore. And I'm just going to find that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base does not actually count as a stitch. That's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch, into the base, still does not count as a stitch, and flip our work. And now our row 2 is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. So just finding that last stitch from our previous row, not working into those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that back loop, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops on our hook. Again, next stitch is back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything. Then continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So we are back. Our first 2 rows are completed. Now our following row is going to be another half double crochet row, now within the back loops. So since we're along the outer edge, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now to do our first back loop half, yarn over, into that last stitch's back loop, pull through 3. Now from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. We are back and our first 3 rows are nearly completed. Now we're just going to connect it into the base. Now the way that we're going to connect this row and work our way up to the following row will be the exact way that we're going to do the rest of our rows until we reach our following stitch marker. So whenever we're connecting our half double crochet row into the base, we're going to count up the next 2 available stitches. So there's 1, there's 2. Into that second stitch into the base, we're going to insert in through there with a slip stitch, just because the half double crochet is a little bit taller. Then to work our way up to the following row, which is a back loop half double crochet row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Now, none of those slip stitches into the base count as a stitch. Now from here, we're going to flip our work and just put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So just finding the last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert with a back loop slip stitch, then continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So we are back. We have just completed the first 4 rows. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases, no decreases, until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Now everyone's last row should be a half double crochet row, then do a chain up 1 and cut. So we are back. We have just completed one of our panels. Now, as you guys can see, I went ahead and did all of my other panels, but all we're going to do once when we worked into our stitch marker stitch was mine is taken out, but trust me, it was. What we're going to do is do a chain up 1 and cut, insert our hook just into that following stitch marker stitch. That would just be the easiest way to get started on the following panel because the ribbing that we have isn't reversible. So just insert your hook into that following stitch marker stitch, make the same chain that we made for the first, do the same exact rows until we're worked into that following stitch marker stitch, then repeat, making our way all the way around until we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 panels. Now once we have our 4 panels, we're then going to work into our inner thigh middle connector just to give us a little bit of width, but we are going to add some more width along the outside just for the hips as well. So what we're going to want to do once we have all 4 panels completed is we're going to try our piece on, making sure that the seam that we made for the waistband is within the middle of the back. Then we're going to make sure that our waistband is sitting where it would sit once when the entirety of the shorts is completed. Then insert our stitch markers into the stitches that we have for the height that we'd like for the middle connector to be. So I wanted roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters for my inner thigh connector. So I inserted my stitch markers into the 8th stitch from the bottom. And I went ahead and did that on all of the panels that we have, making sure that it's all within the inside. Then what we're going to do is our following slip stitch row. So start by making sure that our work is slipped right side out. Then we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch and we're going to work down towards the bottom to give us the same ribbing as the body. Now once when our hook is in through our stitch marker stitch, we're going to work down towards the bottom. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. Then we're going to pull through and do a chain up 1 just to secure. And starting with that same stitch that our chain was in, we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So into that same stitch, we're going to insert into that back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through everything and continue with 1 back loop slip into every stitch until we're worked into that, until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So you've just made our way down with our back loop slip stitch row. To match the ribbing that we have for the body, we're going to chain 2 and flip and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So we are back and we have just completed the first 2 rows for the inner thigh connector. All we're going to do is continue to repeat these 2 previous rows. So just a back loop slip and back loop half double crochet row with no increases, no decreases, until this little inner thigh panel that we have can reach in between our thighs over to the back panel that we have. Now, like I said, we are going to have some details on the outside of the hips as well, just to give us a little bit more width. So once when this is on, I just want to make sure that the inner edges of each panel isn't being stretched too far out or too far in. We just want this to lay straight up and down. Then once we have this portion completed, I will meet everyone back right after a half double crochet row so that we can seam it up. Then we can do the same thing on the other side. So we are back and my inner thigh portion is completed. Now counting from my first back loop slip stitch row, I have a total of 10 rows. That's roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to connect it to the back panel. So we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then since we should all be along the top, we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch's front loop within the back panel and back into our working yarn. we're going to pull through, and then we're going to do the same outside loop slip stitch seam that we did for the waistband because it looks like another back loop slip stitch row. So just do the first one, we're going to chain 1 and working down towards the bottom, finding that next available stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop, next stitch into the back, insert into that back loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, and continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed doing our inner thigh portions. Now what we're going to do from here is seam up the middle. So first things first, we're all going to want to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into the stitch where both of our pant legs are coming out of within the waistband, so into that single crochet row. Then what we're going to do is our outside loop slip stitch seam until we reach our inner thigh connectors. So we're going to pull our working yarn through, then find that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and we're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way down until we reach our inner thigh connectors. So we are back. We have just made our way down with our outside loop slip stitch seam until we have reached our inner thigh connectors. Now from here, we are going to flip our work wrong side out so that we can do a single crochet seam along the inside because we don't want this seam to trace all the way along the outside. So go ahead and flip your work. So now that our work is flipped wrong side out, what we're going to do is work along the tops of our inner thigh connectors at the same time. And we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side slip, 2 single crochets into every side half. So everyone's first side row should be our side slip stitch row, whether if it's a slip stitch row or our seam. We're going to find that top loop within the front panel, same top loop within the back panel, and insert with 1 single crochet. Then into that following side row, which now should be a side half double crochet row, we're going to find that top loop within the front, same top loop within the back, start with 1 single, then since it's a half double crochet into that same top loop within the front and the back, it should be a little bit easier since everything is already gathered. Insert with a single. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, we're going to flip our work right side out again, then do our same exact outside loop slip stitch seam, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up 1 and cut. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up the middle of our shorts. Now we're going to seam up the sides, then work on filling in the hip portion. So first things first, we're going to want to try this on. Just double check, make sure that everything is fitting where it should fit height-wise. Then what we're going to do from here, when our waistband is on, we're simply going to pinch the front and the back panel together all the way down until it gets a little bit too tight to pinch. Then we're going to fill in everything underneath. So for those of you that have my numbers, I've inserted my stitch marker into the 4th stitch from the top. And all we're going to do is our outside loop slip stitch seam till we're worked into our stitch marker stitch. Then do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you guys back so we can start filling it in together. So we are back. We have just seamed up the little bit of our side that we have. Now we're going to fill everything in. So first things first, we're going to want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch that is away from us because we're going to be working our way up towards our side seam and we want to show the back of our back loop slip stitch row to keep up with the ribbing. So from here, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, then I'll meet you back once we're worked into our last available stitch on this side of our pant leg. So we have made our way up with our back loop slip stitch row and we are about to single crochet into the edge of our side seam that we did just so we have 1 middle stitch. So there's not going to be an actual stitch for us to work into, so just find one and insert simply with 1 single crochet. Then we want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then working our way down the other side, 1 back loop slip into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we've just completed our first fill-in row. Now we're going to do our following row in our row sequence, which is a half double crochet row. So from where we're at, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving 3 stitches right before our middle stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back. So we've just made our way up with our back loop half double crochet row. We have left 3 stitches right before our stitch marker stitch. Now we're going to do decrease of 3 half doubles. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into that following stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, and the next stitch is back loop, which should be the stitch right before our stitch marker. Pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through all 5. Then into our middle stitch, we're simply going to put 1 half double crochet and insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch because that is our middle stitch. Then working our way down the other side, we're going to start with a decrease of 3 half doubles again. So yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, pull through. Next stitch's back loop, pull through, and next stitch's back loop, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook again. Then yarn over, pull through all 5, then complete the row with 1 back loop half into the rest of our stitches. We have just completed our second fill-in row. Now we're going to do our third, which is another slip stitch row. So from where we're at, chain 1, flip our work. 1 back loop slip into every stitch, again leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we've just made our way up with our back loop halves, leaving 3 stitches right before our middle stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to do a decrease of 3 back loop slips. So into that next stitch's back loop, we're going to insert, pull through. Next stitch's back loop, pull through, and next stitch's back loop. When we have these 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. We are still going to have our 1 middle stitch, so go ahead and insert into there with 1 slip stitch. And don't forget to insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then working our way down the other side, start with a decrease of 3 back loop slips. So into that next stitch's back loop, insert, pull through, next, pull through, and next, for a total of 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, then complete the row with 1 back loop slip into the rest of our stitches. We've just completed our third fill-in row. From here, it is going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows until these 2 edges that we have can touch each other while it's on. Then once we have this portion completed, I will meet everyone back right after a half double crochet row so that we can seam it up. Then we can do the same thing on the other side. We are back. We have just completed the fill-in portion. Now counting from my first back loop slip stitch row for my fill-in portion, I have a total of 6 rows. Once when I had my 6 rows completed, I went ahead and did my seam. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way that we seamed up the sides and the middle of our pant legs. So just making sure that work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do our outside loop slip stitch seam till we don't have any more stitches left. Once we have that, do a chain up 1 and cut. Then we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. Then we're going to get started on our bottom band. So we are back. We have just completed filling in both of our hips. Now from here, we're going to do our bottom band, and as you can see, I already have one of them completed. We're going to start with a half double crochet row. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of one of our pant legs. I actually like to insert my hook into any one of the side rows within my inner thigh connector. So we're all going to start by inserting our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and start with a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. We just want the height. Now finding our first side row, mine is a side half double crochet row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 half double crochet. Into my following side row, which is a side slip stitch row, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 half double crochet again. From here, continue with 1 half double crochet into every side row. Now that our half double crochet row is all finished up, we're going to do one more row of front and back post double crochets. So once we've made our way all the way around, we're going to slip stitch into that second chain that we made when we started this row. Then once we have slip stitch into that second chain, we're all going to chain 2 and start with a front post double crochet. So starting with the yarn over, finding the first half double crochet from our previous row, not that chain 2, we're going to bring our hook underneath the body of that stitch through the other side, pull through, then pull through 2, pull through 2. Then to do our back post, we're all going to yarn over. Bring our hook down underneath our work now, in through that next gap, over the body of that next half double crochet and through the other side. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through to get 3 loops on our hook again, then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then it's just going to be an alternate between front and back post double crochet. Let's do this again. Yarn over, underneath the body of that following half double crochet, through the other side, pull through 2, pull through 2, again, yarn over, underneath the body of our work, over that next stitch, through the other side, pull through pull through 2, pull through 2, and that's it. We're just going to continue with one front post, one back post double, making our way all the way around. Once we made our way all the way around, go ahead and slip stitch into that second chain that we made when we started off this row. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. Both of our bottom bands are completed. Now the last one we're going to do is our drawstring. So what we're going to do is make a chain the length that we'd like for the drawstring to be. Now I made a total of 150. Then from here we're going to weave it in. So I'm just going to show you guys how I like to weave it in. When it comes to looking at the shorts, making sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to trace that middle seam all the way up into the waistband. And we're going to find the middle stitch. Now I'd like for my drawstring to be within the middle, but you guys can find the top, middle, or the bottom stitch. That's completely up to you. I'm just going to bring it a few rows back and insert my hook into that same middle stitch until I reach roughly where the middle of my shorts are. I'm going to insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, but making sure that I'm not pulling through all the way because we do need to leave some slack for the actual tie portion. And I'm just going to continue doing this, making my way all the way around. Once we've made our way all the way around, I'll meet you back. So now that I've made my way all the way around with my drawstring, we are all done. Now the last thing I have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.